Now listen to Tucker Carlson ask Scott Bessent here if these tariffs are going to lead to taxes being cut for Americans.
And so do you expect that these will be accompanied by a congressionally approved tax cut for the middle class?
Howdy y'all, I'm Brylan. In this video, I'm going to show you what Trump just said a couple of hours ago about what's going on with the tariffs. And I think this is going to make a lot of people very happy. And it's also going to make a lot of people very upset. I mean, I'm just saying. We're also going to look at what the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, just said on the Tucker Carlson show about Trump's tariff plans and whether he thinks that the tariffs are actually going to work. And I think that the answer is going to surprise you because he's kind of not allowed to say what he just said. And then he answers the question that I think every single American wants to know the answer to. Will there be tax cuts for Americans? Real quick, would you mind hitting that thumbs up button? You know when you like this video, you're not agreeing with the insanity. You're helping push it out to more people to help spread the truth. All right, let's start off this video by seeing what Trump had to say almost 40 years ago in the 1980s about tariffs on the Oprah Winfrey show. Listen to this.
Last year, criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily. I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not.
Anybody acting like Trump's tariff plans and it's just out of the blue, like all of this just hit out of nowhere? We had no idea. Trump has been saying this for over 40 years. And he ran on this during his campaign, that he wanted to essentially fund America on tariffs, sort of in the same way. In fact, he actually said, similar to the same way that it was done in the late 1800s, when America was at one of its most prosperous times. So this is nothing new for Trump to be doing. So everybody pretending like they're upset about the tariffs, well, it's all to cause fear and panic. Now, I'm not saying you have to like the tariffs. I'm not saying that you I'm not saying you should like the tariffs, and I'm not saying you shouldn't like the tariffs. Anybody that's going to sit here and tell you they know exactly how all of this is going to play out, they're lying to you. They don't know how this is going to play out exactly. What we do know is this is exactly what Trump does. He puts extreme measures in place, and whatever you're talking about, it doesn't matter what field we're talking about, what part of industry we're talking about, Trump takes things to the extreme to get people to listen. There is a set way we have been doing things for so long, and we are in such massive debt. Things are breaking. We're falling apart. To continue to do the same thing is exactly what the elite class wants us to do because it makes them money, but it continues to hurt America. These tariffs are to get the world to listen, to stop taking advantage of America, and to allow for the opportunity for free and fair trade without America having to be the one getting ripped off. Again, that's not saying everything's going to work out perfectly. It's like, don't shoot the messenger here. This is what Trump had to say just a couple of hours ago about the tariffs. Now, the left has been freaking out. The Democrats are freaking out. They're flipping. They're saying, you know, this is exactly what you're going to get with Trump. See, he's demolishing the world. He's destroying everybody's lives. Everybody will lose everything because they have nothing else to do. That is exactly what the left does. However, again, let's keep in mind that what Trump says in this X post right here, and then I'm going to show you exactly what other countries are doing in response to these tariffs that show that, hold on a minute, there's something more going on here. This is what he had to say this morning. He said, oil prices are down. Interest rates are down. The slow-moving Fed should cut the rates. Food prices are down. There is no inflation. And the long-time abused USA is bringing in billions of dollars a week from the abusing countries on tariffs that are already in place. This is despite the fact that the biggest abuser of them all, China, whose markets are crashing, just raised its tariffs by 34%, on top of its long-term ridiculously high tariffs. Plus, not acknowledging my warning for abusing countries not to retaliate. They've made enough for decades, taking advantage of the good old USA. Our past leaders are to blame for allowing this, and so much else, to happen to our country. We have allowed a system in America for the elites to absolutely abuse the system to benefit themselves and essentially start to destroy the average American, you and me. And of course the markets are going to respond negatively anytime something goes against the status quo. What's the way it's supposed to be done? The market reacts negatively. That's the whole point. That doesn't mean that the market reacting negatively now is like a marker that it's going to just absolutely lead to a recession, loss, where everybody everywhere loses everything. Anybody telling you that is a fear monger. That is what they do best because they're scared. And he immediately followed up with this post. He said the United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panicking. A new party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient. And greatness will be the result. Trump, absolutely believes in what he's doing. We have needed something to be fixed within the system, again, for decades upon decades. And now is the time that people have given a mandate to Trump. Again, he ran on this, that he was going to do things like this. And the American people said yes. And so in turn, Trump does what he ran on doing. And again, you're seeing people flip because they forget how Trump works. Whether you like the tariffs or not, we know that Trump does this exact kind of thing in order to get the world to listen. And the world is listening.
I got a report from the USTR last night that more than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. But they're doing that because they understand that they bear a lot of the tariff. And so I don't think that you're going to see a big effect on the consumer in the U.S. because I do think that the reason why we have a persistent long-run trade deficit is these people have very inelastic supply. They've been dumping goods into the country in order to create jobs, say, in China.
Over 50 countries, and it's actually more now, have reached out to Trump saying, hey, hold on a second, buddy. We were just kidding. All these tariffs that we were charging the USA while the USA was actually in a debt, none of that was real. That was a joke. But now that what we were actually wanting to do was have free and fair trade where, I don't know, you don't charge tariffs, we don't charge tariffs, and hey! In fact, look at what the European Commission just said. This is huge.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
Wait a minute, so they're ready to offer 0 for 0 on the whole tariff thingy, like they've done with other trading partners, but not the USA. Why is it that the only moral thing to do is for the USA to just bear the brunt of all these other countries putting these devastating tariffs on the US where we have to lose in order for us to be like morally in the right? That is insane. That is what the elitist class, that is what these one world government, one world order elites want you to think. That you, as an American, have to lose in order for you to be morally right. That's a lie. Don't ever fall for that. And this is the European Commission saying, okay, now we're ready to come to America and say, hey, 0 for 0. This is exactly what Trump is doing, getting other countries to stop taking advantage of America. In fact, look at what Scott Bessent had to say on the Tucker Carlson show about Trump's tariffs. He answers questions like, does he think that this is actually going to work? And will this lead to cutting taxes for everyday Americans? His answer to that question is going to just blow your mind.
Joining us. So we're at the Treasury Department. The president had a press conference yesterday next door in which he announced a whole new tariff regime, global. He'd been promising to do this, well, for 40 years, really. It came not out of nowhere, but it was clearly his intent all along, as stated. But it did rattle people, including some of his supporters. So I just wanted to ask you, big picture, where do you think this leads?
Well, Tucker, and thank you for having me. And as you said, the president's been talking about this for 4 decades.
Yes.
And this is transformational for the American economy, for the American worker, and for the new Republican alignment. And it's a combination of the old and new ideas. Some of the old ideas were put away. I always tell everyone, and they don't want to hear it, the original tariff man was Alexander Hamilton.
Yes.
And he used tariffs to fund the new nation and to protect American industry. President Trump has added a third leg to the stool, and he uses tariffs to negotiate.
Yes.
But I think this is not unlike, I was a freshman in college when Ronald Reagan came in 1980, and New Day in America. And when I talk to people now, and they look back and they look at the Reagan years so fondly,
Yes.
I remember what it was like, and it was choppy. And the president...
Very choppy.
Very choppy. President Reagan stood the course, but it was a tough time. And then in 1984, President Reagan won re-election with 49 states. And I think they may have even let Mondale win Minnesota just so let us come.
Just to be nice, yeah.
Now listen to what Scott Bessent has to say about if he thinks that these tariffs are actually going to work. This answer is actually exactly what needs to be said. No fluff included.
Do you ever think, since part of your job is to forecast like the effects of these policies, that you have, we've got probably 1 out of 6 people in this country here illegally, maybe 50 million illegal aliens, and the president said he wants to deport them. Then you have AI, and the projections there are massive labor market disruption, fewer people needed. You alluded to that a minute ago. Then you have the tariffs, and we can guess their effect, but we don't really know because we've never done it. And then you have the reaction from the rest of the world to those tariffs. There's so many huge factors that are effectively unknown, that are black boxes. Really, do you ever think wow, it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen?
Look, it is, and I always think that you can never be 100% sure, but you can stay within side of guardrails and keep moving forward. I can't remember. One of the Sunday morning shows I was on a couple of weeks ago, the commentator asked me, she said, can you guarantee me there won't be a recession? And I said, I can't guarantee you anything. There's nothing that tells me there should be one. So I believe that this is going to work, just like President Reagan believed that supply side economics was going to work. But what I do know, that the old system wasn't working.
I think that's right.
And if you look at a system that's not working, you got to be brave to change it. But it would have been easy to keep pumping up the economy, borrowing a lot of money, creating a lot of government jobs. There was no controversy when we're doing all that. But you were going to end up in a calamity. If you go back and look, you look at the financial crisis in 07, 08, economy looked great right up until then. You go back and you look at the end of the dot-com bubble, and then the whole credit problem, the fraud at WorldCom, Enron, some other companies, economy looked great until it didn't. And I think one of the things that we won't get credit for, but that this administration will have done, is avoiding a financial calamity.
You know, it's actually more reassuring to hear an answer like that, to say, we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. Nobody can. But I think that there's not going to be a financial calamity like there was in 07, 08, and other times. And to hear that from somebody that actually believes in what they're doing, isn't giving you the fluff, I think that's more reassuring than hearing the answer that you want to hear from somebody who clearly doesn't believe in what they're doing. That's a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm not saying that they're totally right in everything they're doing and that we shouldn't question anything. We absolutely should. But what we know completely, 100%, is that there needs to be something done to reverse course on where we are headed as a nation financially. Now, listen to Tucker Carlson ask Scott Bessent here if these tariffs are going to lead to taxes being cut for Americans. His answer, if you're anything like me, you're going,
The president suggested in describing his plan for tariffs, he said, look, you could conceivably fund a lot of government with tariffs. And that would suggest that taxpayers fund less of the burden. And so do you expect that these will be accompanied by a congressionally approved tax cut for the middle class?
Tony, I just want to go back for a moment, too, that one of the things that the tariffs are doing is we are pushing back against other economic systems. So the Chinese have a very different economic system. They have low cost, some would call it literally slave labor. They subsidize industry with subsidized loans. They have a lot of non-tariff barriers. Your show can't be shown there.
Yes.
So we're pushing back against that. And with the tariff income, it can be substantial. We saw there's a study out recently from a group at MIT that shows that with President Trump's first China tariffs, which were approximately 20%, the price level went up 0.7. So to answer your question, if we could put on a 20% tariff and have the foreigners pay that and use that money to bring down our government deficit and keep taxes low here, that's a very unique formula that hasn't been tried in this country for a long time.
Ultimately, from that answer, it sounds like, the ultimate goal would be to have taxes be lowered at some point. But if you notice, he doesn't actually answer the question. And that is extremely disappointing, just to be real. Because I've said this for a long time. I'm not the one who came up with this, but you cannot have these super high tariffs like this. Like say these tariffs being implemented stay at the rates that they are just forever, and then the tax rate for the average American is like 20-30% of their income. That will absolutely destroy the average American. You cannot have it both ways. And that is exactly what we need to see. If we're going to play this tariff game, we need to see income tax come down on Americans. Tax is theft, first and foremost. But if we're going to see anything, at least let's see that rate start dropping significantly, down into the single digits. So I think one thing that they could do is start messaging that that income taxes are going to be significantly reduced or abolished altogether. They need to give Americans some sort of hope, even though things seem like they're uncertain right now. Proverbs chapter 3 tells us this. Look at verses 5 through 8. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. But hey, let me know your thoughts about all this in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, join this community. I would love to hear from you on a regular basis. And please hit that thumbs up button, when you like this video, to get pushed out to more people, and it would really help spread the truth. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.